Welcome back to Opinion Box. Levi Konesh is my name. I'm here with JEROTICH SEII. She is an active citizen, now transitioning into the big house of the Senate. She's an aspirant for the ELGEYO MARAKWET county, on a UDA party ticket. One of the big issues...
Sorry. There are many of us in UDA.
You're an aspirant, I said.
Yes, I'm an aspirant. I'm not on a UDA ticket. Please don't get me in trouble because there's a process.
Okay, let me be clear.
Please,
so we
I am not
aspirants, but running under the UDA.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, vast majority of all of those many people
are
all running under. They're all members of UDA. Yeah. So we haven't gotten to the point.
Let's start from there actually.
Since
because I was going to go to somewhere else, but since we talk about that at length, the nomination process is really the election. Mm-hmm. Especially coming from that neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. And that usually tends to be quite, we've seen nomination processes in this country. Do you believe, some people say that IEBC should conduct such nominations. Do you think that should be considered?
You know, I think that it is perfectly appropriate that political parties conduct their own nominations. And one of the things, as I watched the UDA nominations earlier on this year in April, as they unfolded, was that there was a high level of transparency from where I sat. I was not an aspirant, so maybe aspirants may have other things to say about it, but I found it by and large very, very transparent. It was something that I gave credit to the party for being able to manage to the extent possible, the best way possible. If you take that away from political parties, then it's just introducing for me additional layers of authority that the IEBC would have over the democratic process. And I think political parties need to learn how to conduct nominations. You remember, I think one of the political parties, the other major political parties, had direct tickets. And for better or for worse, look at where it landed them. Yeah. So I think that it is really important that political parties conduct their nominations and conduct them in a free and transparent and fair manner. And so I think it will be in order that UDA.
And the advantage, of course, is that in a by-election, the focus is sharper.
The focus is very, very sharp because you don't have the MCA seat, the woman rep, the member of parliament, the governor, presidential candidates. You don't. It's just this is sharply focused on one particular seat, and in this case, it's a Senate. Yeah. So I think it's all in order, and we're just waiting for the vetting to be concluded, and for the vacancies to be declared, and for IBC to roll its timeline, where they will say, I suppose you have this period of time within which to conduct your nominations. And thereafter, you go into the final campaign electioneering period leading up to the elections. But you are right that from what I've seen so far, it is overwhelmingly UDA. And so I think that the party nominations will be the most important. That will be like the election, in my opinion, because from there, depending on whether you have, and because we are a democratic country, it is entirely likely that you will have other aspirants from other candidates from other political parties rise up. But from there, it will be pretty clear the direction that the county might be taking. So for those of us who are aspiring, I think for us, our goals, our eyes, at least for me, I'm looking at the nomination day as that day that will determine how I move forward or how we move forward.
Yeah. Sadly, in 2022, we still talk about insecurity. How do you think you would address that? I mean, what's your opinion, really, on matters of security?
You know, there's a woman I greatly admire. She's the woman rep for Baringo County, and I had occasion to converse with her yesterday, and she really shared deeply how much insecurity continues to ravage that part of the country where we come from and stop us from ever moving forward in terms of development. You know, the banditry is unbridled, it is uncontrolled, it is also secretly sanctioned. And this is something that if we do not radically and in a precision kind of manner deal with. And I remember President William Ruto the other day said, this will come to an end, nasio tafadhali. You know, there has to be a way that this comes to an end. But I also think back to the past, to people like Mheshimiwa Lina Chebiki Limo and her role mobilizing women around issues of peace. That when women ululate, when the bandits come back from raiding, where they have left people dead and where they have killed, where they have stolen heads of livestock and destroyed livelihoods, even as women. And that's why I made reference to women, peace and security. What is a role of women in terms of bringing this to an end? So this is something that has to be part and parcel of my agenda if I am elected senator of ELGEYO Marakwet County. And the way conflict has ravaged, and so if you look at the shape of ELGEYO Marakwet County, where KO South is the appendix and you go up and it kind of opens up and you have Marakwet West and Marakwet East, this whole section up here is West Pokot. And it also touches Baringo, you know. And if we do not address that, and if you go then there is Samburu, and if you go there is Turkana, if we do not address insecurity, like I said, ELGEYO Marakwet County is not an island. If we do not address that, there will never be any lasting peace and stability that side of Marakwet. And you can't say, that's Marakwet. No, it is ELGEYO Marakwet County, and it has a ripple effect. Insecurity encroaches. Insecurity destroys lives and destroys livelihoods. So this is something that at the Senate level, senatorial level, also on the ground, we will have to continuously be dealing with it. And the leaders, whether it is Senator Murkomen and all the other leaders that I've even had occasion to listen to repeatedly, they have said this is something that must be definitively and permanently dealt with. This business of armed bandits who are able to kill our military personnel without even blinking, this culture of banditry that we have not been able to tackle must be dealt with. And that's something that I would also look at, because we have to have peace and security there, and also in Baringo North, you know, and in Samburu and in Turkana. Yeah. Yes.
Now, you are an active member of the Linda Katiba movement.
Yes.
And I have to ask you, you know, Martha Karua was one of your members.
Yes.
And when she was announced as, you know, the presidential, you know, running mate to Raila Odinga, many had thought that that would tip you over to that side. What didn't give?
Well, first of all, I cannot underscore enough how much respect I have for Martha Karua. Honorable Senior Counsel Martha Karua, who was also running mate for Raila Odinga in the just concluded elections, is somebody that I have known for many years, maybe better part of 25 years. She is my friend. We were all co-conveners of the Linda Katiba movement. She is even my lawyer. You know, and so she's somebody who I have a lot of respect for. But again, you remember I spoke earlier about my family and the fact that we are highly democratic and we go our different ways. That was the same. For me, when Honorable Martha Karua made the decision to join Azimio, I knew I was never going to join Azimio. Why? Because of Linda Katiba, our fight to push back against BBI, and the fact that for me, I mean, it really rubs me raw to date, that we were on the verge of an unconstitutional repeal of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. That is something that we as the Linda Katiba movement, along with people like my good friend Dr. David Ndii, we were also part of the court case. So there was the outside movement, the broader and wider Linda Katiba movement, and then there are those of us who went to court and had consolidated petitions, well, one after the other, challenging the constitutionality of this BBI process, the Constitution Amendment Bill, and I am so grateful that we stopped reggae. We stopped reggae dead in its tracks. Not because you cannot change a constitution, but because the process was wholly unconstitutional. And that is what we rose up to push back against and to fight. In fact, I'm known as Mama Linda Katiba. You know, I know when I'm on the ground, I say, ni sisi tulisimamisha BBI, ni sisi tulisimamisha reggae. And you know, if we had gone so far as to see the conclusion of the BBI process, we would not be looking at Kenya today the way it is. And we certainly would not have had His Excellency William Samoei Ruto as the President of the Republic of Kenya. So this is something that I take extremely personally. Since 2018, when the handshake took place, and the task force of who my father was a member of that original task force, and it went on, and then went into further recommendations where you had experts gathering to discuss, and then suddenly you have a bill that has to be rushed through the counties and approved, and Parliament is supposed to pass it, and the whole time, and history will actually, these days you cannot actually be forgotten on
and
the
counties
internet.
actually got car grants
Sorry?
along the way. The counties, the guys got car grants along the way.
Yeah, you get car grants, but hey, Baringo said no. So there are a few counties that stood brave, but the point, I think I'm making about it is that if we're ever going to get to a point where we decide that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is not fit for purpose, then let us go about it the correct way. For us to promulgate the Constitution of 2010, there was an entire process, a 20-year process in the offing. It wasn't like a 1-2 year, secret Trojan horses and machinations, and then Ghafla bin Wu, you suddenly have a constitutional amendment bill, and then we're being forced to pass it, and we're being told this is the way it will be, and expanding and bloating the executive.
It took a long time.
Expanding the legislature. I remember one of the reasons why my father stepped back and said, I will no longer be a part of this, is because he said, no Wanjiku asked for an additional parliamentary wage bill. The additional 90 constituencies that were going to be thrown in. There was all kinds of carrots being dangled, including the divvying up of seats at the very top to say, you shall be a winner, I shall be a winner, we shall all be winners together. And at the end of the day, where is Wanjiku? And those who know me know that I've always said at the end of the day, it is about Wanjiku and what matters to Wanjiku. And by Wanjiku, we're talking about all Kenyans. Or today you could say hustlers. Or you could say we're talking about the ordinary Kenyan who is footing the bill of a bloated government. And we want to make it lean and mean, not expand it. And we don't want to allow impunity to thrive by sneaking in provisions and repealing and amending and changing completely certain sections of the Constitution. So history will judge me well and judge my comrades well. We are so pleased, we're so glad that the law was upheld, that the law prevailed, and we now have an opportunity under this particular government to fully implement the Constitution. Tekeleza Katiba.
Some still say that the winner takes all mentality is punitive. Like we just came from a very closely contested election. I mean, the difference between the winner and the loser is just 200,000 plus votes. Some would say, does that loser then just go home and wait it out? There is now the creation of, the prime CS post, and many are saying, it looks like, it's still, a glimpse of the BBI returning in some way, because people realize you have to expand this thing kidogo, and, put people somewhere so that, the country remains, the understanding is the cohesion of the country remains. Would you agree?
As I always say, and I think I've used it before in other spaces, that when Usain Bolt runs and breaks a world record, does a 100-meter dash, or you have our very own Eliud Kipchoge winning the Berlin Marathon and breaking the world record as he just did, when he is being crowned winner of the Berlin Marathon, do they say, wait a minute, this is not fair? It is patently unfair because he beat the other person by just a fraction, or by 2 minutes, or by 10 minutes. We must find a way where we all share this prize. So what does that say about the effort that Eliud Kipchoge put into training, preparation? What does that say about the 1 minute or the 20 seconds or the millisecond that allowed him to win? So for me, if we are a democracy, we need to accept that there are winners and there are losers. You cannot say work really hard, but those 230,000 odd people who voted, of whom maybe I'm one, voted for William Samoei Ruto don't count. It is 50% plus one for a reason, because every single vote counts. Now, the challenge is how to be gracious in victory and gracious in defeat. I think that is where the friction always begins. And the fact that we are a country that always says, it was unfair, this was, there was rigging, there was this, there was that. So that feeling of of mistrust and feeling that something somewhere was not right. That is perhaps what needs to be addressed. When we have transparent, free and fair elections, you will have less of an occasion for this kind of, oh, it's not fair, we need to share the seat. Once that happens, and I was so, I remember when Chebukati said, Hamjamaliza Kutali, he did a data dump on Kenyans. And he said, it's there on the portal, go count, go tally. This was addressing the questions of the lack of transparency that previously existed within the IEBC. And by doing that, however, whichever way you looked at it, it got to a point that even media houses stopped tallying.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the Supreme Court could not find for the petitioners and said, actually, this was a free and fair election. Now, as we keep pushing towards that, whether it's the nominations we're talking about coming up soon or future elections, when we make the process free, fair and transparent, you will have less of an occasion for that kind of feeling of yeah, I'm losing and I don't want to lose and I want to fight the person who won. And then at the end they say, like we saw after post-election violence in 2007, that with the peace accord, then suddenly you had prime minister, you had so many seats that were created as part of the peace accord. I think we need to just understand that there will be winners and there will be losers, and we have to learn how to deal with that defeat and that victory. And so far I can say His Excellency the President has been nothing but gracious in his victory. There's not been endless parties and crowing and celebrating and mocking. No, he has said from the very beginning, his business is one of national unity, of all of us rising together, that he's not just the president of those who voted for him, he's the president for all Kenyans. And I think that if he continues in this vein and seeks to be the best president that Kenya ever had, then one day you will never have to ask this question. It'll be a thing of the past. We don't need to be divvying up the pie. What we need to be dividing is the equitable access to resources for all Kenyans wherever they are. It's not about power sharing at the top. It's about making sure that Wanjiko is all right all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in a time when, the cost of living is very high.
Very,
Yeah.
very. Electricity,
Yeah.
fuel. I mean, with the subsidies
And people
lifted,
are remembering you actually for even championing the lower electricity prices.
Again, the consistency there. And I campaign, I never, kidole kimoja hakivunji chawa.
Yeah.
So for me, it has always been about teamwork. I work with a fantastic group of 5 other Kenyans. We're 6. We call ourselves the Energy Justice 6. You may see me as the front face or the spokesperson or the leader or whatever of the group, but we work together. We are all in the court of law. We never gave up. We've actually moved to the Court of Appeal, championing consumer protection, lower electricity prices, faulty transformers, dangerous service, people getting electrocuted along the way, and of course some of the more systemic and structural issues around illegally awarded power purchase agreements, which goes back to the independent power producers who sell us electricity. And that is why our electricity continues to be high, because when they were awarded in a less than constitutional manner, we are in a situation where we will pay for the electricity whether we use it or not, in violation of the 4th schedule of the Constitution, might I add, which looks at devolution and what counties are able to do. So look at Lake Turkana wind power in Loyangalani. To what extent have the people there benefited from this largest wind farm in Africa? They evacuate power from Loyangalani down to Suswa and then sell it to us at exorbitant prices. What has actually happened in Marsabit County? To look at the issues of those whose land was actually taken away from them and not compensated adequately. That matter is still in court, by the way. So when you look at issues of energy, it is the entire range from A to Z. But at the end of the day, you and I have a right, Nasio Tafadhali.
Would competition solve that?
Yes. Nasio Tafadhali, to affordable electricity. Wanjiko will vote with her feet. When you demonopolize electricity distribution and sale, then it'll behoove Kenya Power to be as cost effective in its sale of electricity to us as possible. If there's several of us selling electricity, if I don't like the price you're giving me, levy, I will go to that person over there and that person over there. So we need 100% to demonopolize this de facto monopoly called Kenya Power. And if you look at the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, and I was so pleased that they actually reached out to switch off KPLC and said, what would you like to see when it comes to issues of energy? And one of the things that has to happen is Kenya Power has to be delinked from budgetary support. Because when it is linked to budgetary support, like Kenya Airways and many other parastatals, they can do whatever. They can be as profitable or as unprofitable, and they'll be bailed out. And who pays for that bailout? It's you and me. Our taxes continue to rise. We will never get out of this cycle of debt. So when you demonopolize, when you stop these parasitic quasi-state corporations from leeching and sucking the blood out of Kenyans, then we'll begin to see more efficient approaches to business. So let Kenya Power sink or swim. When I say switch off KPLC, it's not so much that I don't want us to have electricity in Kenya, but I'm saying you have to sell us affordable, safe electricity. And if you don't do that, somebody else will, and we will keep fighting, and we don't stop. When people say, oh, Chero, you'll go to the House of Parliament and you'll suddenly relax, I say, we haven't relaxed. When we had simply the court of law and the court of public opinion, why would I relax when now I have access to ask
the naysayers
will
tell you, we're not like South Africa, we don't have blackouts, we're not like Nigeria, we're okay. What would you say?
We're not okay. I mean, whenever I've been in Nigeria, and if you're in Lagos, you will hear nothing but the hum of generators because it's mostly a generator powered, especially in the residential areas. It's just generator powered. When I lived in South Africa for a few years, and I remember when it was winter, and it does get very cold there, you have load shedding, so you have the rationing, and it continues to date. But if you look at the anatomy of the ESCOM heist in South Africa, Kenya Power might be just like a tiny little microcosm, because in terms of the magnitude of the theft, the scandal in there, Kenya Power might not exactly match up to it. But if you look at the energy sector as a whole, if you go to the issues of fuel, you remember earlier on this year when there was a shortage of fuel, if you begin to unpick, if you look at the issues of the open tendering system, if you look to see how cartels were profiteering off of the subsidies, then although now I can barely afford to fuel my car till it's full, unaeka tu 500, you can't even,
just get to
I must tell you a true story that a couple of weeks ago I said Jaza. That was the biggest mistake I ever made, because it cost me 12,000 shillings to Jaza my car. When crazy. A year ago it was 7K. Even then I was annoyed. And maybe 10 years ago, where was it? We are not struggling from high oil prices around the world. We are struggling because of cartels and those who profiteer off of keeping energy subsidized or at a particular level. So may this Kenya Kwanza administration, of whom I hope to be part if I am elected Senate, correct these things. And if they don't, we'll also be criticizing ourselves. And His Excellency the President welcomes criticism from within and without. He says that is how we do our work better. I'm not going to the Senate to be neutered and to be silenced. It is to push. In fact, it is my agenda that His Excellency President William Ruto succeeds. Because if he doesn't succeed, we have all failed as a country. We will all suffer collectively as a country, no matter who you voted for. So mine is to support him and to support his administration and to collaborate and coordinate across the parties. We have to be seeing ourselves as part of one country called Kenya, part of the East African community that is Indian Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, and there's a lot we can do. Kenya is a wonderful place. Kenya is a beautiful country, and we must all work together until we're all okay. Because as I keep saying, and I always say, we are not okay until everyone is okay. From the mama who was cooking stones in Kwale, all the way to the mother who is having to bury her child who has been shot by a stray or deliberate bullet. We have to make things better for all Kenyans.
We do. We're out of time, but I have to ask you this as you leave.
Yes.
What would you tell the residents of ELGEYO MARAKWET to focus on when choosing their next senator? Tell them.
Okay. my fellow residents, I should have said my fellow Kenyans,
residents is good.
fellow residents of ELGEYO Marakwet County. Actually, what I would like to say is that as somebody offering herself in service as a senator, I would say you want to look for somebody who is able to take your issues clearly, concisely, and articulately to the House of Parliament. Somebody who will fight for you tooth and nail and make sure that no matter what, resources get to where they need to get. People of ELGEYO Marakwet County, you want somebody who will not be fighting your governor or fighting your members of parliament or MCAs or anybody else in leadership who is there delivering development, but rather somebody who is there to collaborate, to coordinate, to support, because together we can rise. Together from the bottom up, we can make ELGEYO Marakwet a better county. So you need somebody who will be able to take every single one of your concerns to the national level. Somebody who can fill Senator Kipchumba Murkomen's big shoes and continue to keep ELGEYO Marakwet County on the map for the betterment of the people of ELGEYO Marakwet County and the entire Republic of Kenya. So that's what I would say. So vote wisely, vote democratically, listen to all of us, and you know, I say kwa unyenyekevu, please give me the vote when the time comes, and trust me, I will not let you down.
Thank you so much.
Thank you too,
I appreciate having this discussion. We look forward to more discussions. Like you said, you'll always be approachable.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. JEROTICH SEII is an active citizen, also aspiring to be the next senator of ELGEYO Marakwet County. You know, should they call the polls, whenever they call the polls. I don't know whether that's this year, or maybe
well, if you look
year.
at the 90-day period that IEBC has, you might be looking at the elections, not the nominations, but the elections running into early next year. So we have about, about 3 months.
Period.
Actually, not so long, considering how long the other campaign periods are. But because all focus will be on these by-elections, it'll feel inordinately long, but it's quite fast, actually.
Is there enough time to get everywhere?
Well, I hope so. I have to. And I will be everywhere. I will have gone everywhere by the time we are hitting the polls.
Yeah.
Yes.
So watakuona kwa ground.
Wataniona kwa ground, niko kwa ground. I will always be on the ground, and not Nairobi ni ground, because here is where the Houses of Parliament are. Yeah. So wherever ground is, I will be there to work hard and represent the people. Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you very much.
Good night. God bless you. That's Opinion Box. See you next week.